Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Tech Break by Friday. Today, we're talking about how AI is finally turning HR from a cost center into a strategic powerhouse. And who is better to guide us than Ram Reddy, who we just call Ram for today? So, Ram isn't just a tech guru with 20 years in HR and IT certifications like PMP and TOGAF under his belt. He is also a high octane expert who loves long distance running and boxing. He's worked all over the map: India, Abu Dhabi, the UK, and traveled into 29 countries so far. So, welcome to the stage, Ram.
Thank you so much for having me, Paraskevi. That's great.
What are the core challenges in traditional HR prompted by organizations to seek AI powered shared services solutions?
Absolutely, right? The HR teams have been like busy with a lot of work for years together. So imagine that you've got all the HR professionals spending about 73% of their time on stuff that doesn't actually make a lot of sense. So, for example, they are stuck doing all the manual work in terms of, say, enrollment paperwork, answering the same password reset questions, like say for the hundredth time, or manually reconciling the payroll data across three different systems. And this thing keeps getting worse, right? And most of these companies are running on disconnected systems, just duct taped together, which is a bigger problem. So, what is the outcome? Right now, the employees are frustrated because even to get a simple solution is like solving a, right? None of them are getting answers on time. It's getting delayed, and moreover, that's a bigger issue, correct?
Of course, a
And
struggle.
HR, right? And HR is unable to focus on the more strategic work where they should be supporting the business in enhancing the business. However, they're ending up just supporting all of these manual tasks that doesn't add a lot of value. And that's what we're trying to address today.
Yeah, I think that's something that um, has been a big issue as someone who has given a lot of interviews, especially for internships. As I came out of university, I was like pretty amazed. Could be also because of COVID,
Right.
but I think like I applied to more than 1,000 different companies. And can you share with us maybe like brief overview of the biggest changes that you have seen intelligent automation brings to the HR service, and how this compares to like legacy models that they used to have?
Totally. The shift is phenomenal, I was going to say, right? Think
Mm-hmm.
about flipping the entire service model on its head. So,
Mm-hmm.
right now, we're looking at a 360 turn. In the older version of the HR support model, everything was manual. A person has to check for a policy document, check for emails, ask somebody, and then answer a particular question. Going forward, we're going to flip the entire scene, right? We're looking at bringing in at least 85% automation through AI, right? We're getting a lot of smart AI assistants that can answer all of these questions in different languages, as meaning as like 40 different languages. They're available 24/7. So imagine a scenario where you don't necessarily have to wait for somebody in HR to answer a question,
Mm-hmm.
but rather a system who is as interactive as a human being answering all of these questions for you. That's the paradigm shift we're looking at. But now comes a bigger question, right? So, like, what does people do,
Mm-hmm.
right? That is where the human factor comes in for handling more complicated cases, for handling more compliance related cases, for cases where you need empathy, right? Those are the only 10 to 15% of the highly selective cases that will be left for the humans or the people to answer. But most of the repetitive jobs or the repetitive work in the HR support will eventually end up with the systems. That's the shift we're looking at.
also what creates connection is human with a human. But when something is like simple enough as like, do I need to fill this here, for example, you don't need a human to tell you this. Like, you are okay if AI is also answering that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Right? Why not?
pretty cool. What are the first critical steps developing, let's say, a strategic roadmap for introducing AI and automation into an HR system shared services? For
Yeah. Yeah. Again, another great question, right? So the first thing to think about is what do you really want to automate?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Don't just start with automating anything because garbage in, garbage out, right? So think about only automating processes that are very well streamlined. If they're not, first work on documenting them and then see which ones can be eliminated, which steps can be eliminated. Like, do we need really like 5 approvals to do a certain, promotion? Think in that perspective and then start coming up with the right documentation. And once you have that, then just don't again jump to automating it, then go to your leadership and seek the necessary approval. Because many a times a change needs to come from top down. The people need to understand the value, and only the leadership can provide such high level of understanding of why we're trying to do this, right? And once you are there, then start looking at automating these things. Don't just try to do everything in one go. Place them strategically. Start with the easiest options, right? There's always some processes that you can automate, which are so easy to get automated, but they will be giving you the highest benefit. So try and understand which ones give you the most ROI, the return on investment, and then start automating those first. That's the approach I would take. Hope
yeah,
that helps.
that sounds exactly like what no 80% of the AI projects usually fail. And not because like they are not good projects, they are pretty good projects, but the problem is what are we actually trying to optimize or automate? Like
Right?
what value do we bring to the organization? And yeah, this value needs to have like a return on investment, be measurable. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We go through a walkthrough of the most key components of a world class technology, let's say, of an automated AI HR shared service system.
Sure. Um, think about building an architecture similar to building a house,
Mm-hmm.
right? You cannot literally build a house without a foundation. So, right, in the architecture world, that is the data,
Mm-hmm.
right? The data is the foundation for everything. So ensure that we first build a very solid data layer that helps building the rest of the things, right? Because that's going to be the foundation. And fixing data is not an easy job. If we have 10 different systems having 10 different sorts of data, it's not easy to combine them. Think about building a data layer that sort of combines all the data from different sources, transforms them, and comes up with a very straight and lean architecture that essentially provides, hey, if I want to know all the details of RAM, whether it's coming from different systems, it should just give me all the data. That's the first layer we're thinking about, right? And once we've established that layer one, then comes layer two,
Mm-hmm.
which is like building the intelligence engine on top of this. Historically, if you ask me, like maybe 5 or 10 years ago, this wasn't the case because AI hasn't evolved so much into the HR world. But now we're thinking more advanced in terms of building that intelligence engine. It's sort of creating your own virtual chat GPT for HR, like creating your own algorithms for HR. They don't necessarily be in the front end to the employees, but this is where you're building that layer that can assist the next layer, right? That's what we're going to talk about next, which is the layer three.
Mm-hmm.
Layer three is the most crucial one, and this is where you'll see all the magic happening for us. Right? And that's where you see the automation coming in to reality. Okay, we're talking about, say, the AI agents, we're talking about the self service portals.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we build all those AI agents which are pre trained with the employee data built in layer one and two, and then they start answering all of the questions, right? You can have voice level interaction, you can have the dashboards that can basically answer some of the questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And on top of all of that is the experience layer, which is the layer four, right? The experience layer gives you the nice visual appeal, the ease of usage, the convenience, the mobile apps, you talk about it, you name it, right? If we try to combine all of these things together, that's the best architecture that we can build. And it's not an easy one to build right away, right?
Yeah.
It's going to take us some time to build it, like any other construction of a house, right? But we need to start thinking in that direction from now onwards so that we can build that beautiful architecture.
Yeah, that's something that is pretty complicated, but if you build it like, let's say, with the great foundations, it can flourish to something that will be like bigger and better with time.
Right?
Yeah, and I kind of understand that you need to basically handle the data correctly for the first layer in order to basically give them to your intelligence engine. Then your intelligence engine needs to basically tell the ML algorithms, do you understand the questions correctly from the humans? Because sometimes we don't even understand ourselves.
Exactly. We
Yeah,
are
that's
complicated when we
and
ask
then
questions.
yeah, and then when you go to layer three, you already have like these problems figured out to like start building on top of that, so you can create something that it's like long lasting and it helps people. That's
100%.
yeah, that's amazing. What do you think are the best practices for integrating automation tools with existing ERP systems and maybe already core AI HR platforms that people are using?
Sure. Yeah, and this is another crucial layer, right? This doesn't necessarily fall in all those four layers that I just mentioned about, but this is and the ERP system that hosts all of our essential employee data is very sensitive. So any interaction that these AI systems do with that ERP system should be based off an API level integration. I mean, don't use Excels. Those days are gone. Excel is so old, right? So,
Yeah.
and I, with all due respect to all of my Excel lovers, I do love Excel, right? But we're entering into a phase where we shouldn't be relying on manual Excels to sort of synchronize between the systems. It should be API based. And what happens is that when you have two systems talking to each other based on APIs, the data is shared synchronously because you're running them off an event driven API architecture rather than trying to refresh it overnight. Don't do that, right? Try and keep it as much as synchronous as possible so that whenever there is a change in one system, it reflects automatically in all the other systems. That's the first, approach I would take from an ERP integration standpoint. The other one has got to do with the security. Ensure that when these two systems are talking to each other, they are very, very secure. Loop in your IT security team. They can help us testing it out and giving us the right direction of setting up multi layers so that the data, especially the HR data, is very sensitive. Nobody should be able to hack into it or make unnecessary requests and extract any data which is not necessary, right? So we're basically opening a portal to the ERP system through AI. So we got to be very, very careful with the security issues. And I know some companies we've seen, like millions and millions of data being of amount or fines or people getting sued because there were security breaches with the ERP integration. So these are the main two things I would say we should be careful about. And lastly, I would say have a governance model. Don't just build things because we love it. have a governance model in place, right? Anything that's not controlled will be going crazy. I would put a governance model on top of all of these.
That's right. Yeah. You never know sometimes the decisions that an AI model might present to you from some hallucinations or whatever. And then if you don't have a human checking that out, you may find yourself in a really difficult situation.
Exactly.
Do you think that like AI agents and ML models um, would manage to handle up maybe 95% of routine employee inquiries more effectively?
Sure. Yeah. And look, this is where it gets all detail level
Yeah.
discussion, right? So the AI agents are new but old. There's all that. There's a lot of discussion on LinkedIn, on everywhere you go
Mm-hmm.
and look at AI, right? That's the first thing, and even someone has called that 2025 is the year of AI agents, right?
Exactly. I saw a thing post on LinkedIn that someone was walking through an airport and there was like a huge poster. Are you still hiring humans?
There we
The
go.
AI is here, and I'm like, what? Like,
Yeah,
who would do the work? Like,
right. There we go. Right. So when there is so much of expectation, so much of publicity and advertisements about AI agents, and everyone wants to use it, but the reality is, like, how many of them are actually using it?
mm-hmm.
The first thought process of trying to use an AI agent really boils down to like three things. Do you have the right documentation of what you want to feed into the AI agent? Do you have the right contextual information? And I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then, does the AI agent, is it trained to learn from the patterns? So the first thing first is the documentation. Any process should be documented so well that the AI agent can literally look at the document and start implementing it. That's the power, right? If you feed a bad documentation, it'll come up with bad processes and it'll start hallucinating and doing whatever crazy stuff it's not supposed to do. Have your processes so well documented that the AI agents literally understand what you're supposed to do. The second one is about the contextual information. Contextual information is something where it is specific to the person who is asking the question. So, for example, if it's my case, if it's Ram trying to ask an AI agent about what my medical benefits are, the agent should understand what my marital status is. How many dependents do I have? What's my age? Where do I live? And it should then give me very specific answer, which is more relevant to me and not for anybody else. So that's where we're talking about this contextual information. And the third one is learning from patterns. No system will be super clean and super relevant on day one, or super accurate for that matter on day one, right? It'll have to learn from the patterns. It'll start asking multiple questions to multiple teams and understand how people are asking questions. It'll learn based on those patterns. So if we manage to understand these three things and design the AI agents based on that, then I think we'll be able to handle a very high percentage of the routine tasks. I mean, I'm talking about HR specifically, but this can go into any stream really.
Yeah, and I think what you're exactly mentioning here is exactly what you also mentioned before: garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah,
So wrong documentation basically means you're putting into your model garbage. So you need to expect that you will get also garbage out of it. And
yes,
the second one that you mentioned, for example, about context, when you're asking about your specific benefits into an agent, you don't want to like be confused or misunderstanding with like the marital status of John, for example, which you are in the same
right.
company. You want your specific information. So,
Yes.
yeah. What do you think that does predictive analytics play in actually having a proactive HR decision making system and maybe like also enhance the employee experience?
Absolutely. And this is, think about this as another stream of AI. And so far, we've discussed about, hey, how we can automate things with AI, but then AI can also play a very interesting role of predicting things based on the historical data. What we're talking about is, let's say, I'll give you an example, right? Maybe a couple of examples. The whole idea of trying to get the prediction is to move away from a very reactive method to a very proactive approach. And what I mean by that is, many a times we see that the damage has happened already, and then we try to see what we need to do. I don't think that should be the case with AI in the picture. AI can help us predict things to a very higher level of accuracy, and we should be leveraging that capability to see how we can predict things and fix it even before it happens. Example, let's talk turnover. We all know turnover is a big problem in many of the organizations. What we're looking at is building a model using different machine learning algorithms. Using them, we don't necessarily have to wait for the person to leave, but rather find out whether somebody's probably going to leave and then understand how we can control that. This is a very nice way of trying to retain our people because they are all very precious. Invest in our people. And the second thing, for example, has got to do with skills. The skills are evolving so rapidly in the world that it's so hard to keep up with them. We don't know which skill is relevant, which skill is out of date, and how is our organization doing against the overall skill market externally, right? That's where again AI can come and help you. It can predict whether our company is still relevant from a skill standpoint, or if you have to retrain our employees to go into those new skills. For example, do we know that all the employees know AI or Gen AI? If we don't, how do we train them? Those are the sort of prediction models that we can build, and it can help HR to find out the problem even before it happens and fix them. This will eventually save a ton of costs as well because, for example, turnover is a lot of cost in rehiring. With having these models in place, you can predict it, fix it even before it happens. That's what we're looking at in the future.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it would be a lot better if this is proactive, especially like towards the skills, because why would you wait until you need the skills in order to retrain your people? Like, if you would be a little bit more proactive and you had some time, you save time, but you also like train your people. The people stay with you, they invest in you and your company, and that like is a whole cycle that goes on again and again. Yeah,
Spot on.
yeah, pretty valuable stuff. For example, based on your experience, what are the measurable outcomes that leading organizations achieve, and particularly regarding maybe cost savings, but also you during that have you also seen like some employee satisfaction rising up as well?
I was going to say the numbers are really remarkable, I would say. Many organizations who have started implementing these automations have seen a lot of cost savings. I'd say anywhere between, minimal of 10 to 20%. It's not necessarily with cutting people or something, but it's more about redirecting them into higher value work. Why do we have to do these mundane, repetitive tasks when we can do something more valuable? Right. So that's where we see that tremendous shift, right? And with this reduction in the manual work, we've seen about 80% saving in the tasks. If you look at many well implemented systems, the automation has taken care of 80% of the work. That has freed up a lot of time from an administrative standpoint, and people are spending more time in doing strategic work that can actually help and develop people, right? That's what we're looking at. And now coming from a predictive modeling standpoint, I've seen many organizations running these sort of models and they've achieved around 80, 85, 90% accuracy. I mean, this is tremendous. This is actually transformative, if you ask me, compared to what we've seen historically. And this will reach higher levels going forward. And I think it'll save a lot more money, a lot more costs. It'll reduce, the stress of going in compliance or whatever. I think we're looking at a massive improvement from where we are previously.
Based on your experience, I'm sure that you have seen a lot of future trends in the market and that you might have some thoughts about this. So, what trends do you foresee that they will shape the next phase of HR automation?
Right. And this is where I'm wearing my 2030 hat and like predicting what might or might not happen. And this is very interesting, right? I think there will be a lot of improvement in the way we interact with the system or with AI in general. Right now, it's very text-based interaction, but I think in the future, the voice interaction is gonna take a lot more precedence compared to what we see today. I mean, personally, I don't prefer to like go through different menus, figure out where this is, and then click, 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 and find out and execute it. I think that's where we'll see that the voice AI agents will take over a lot of those tasks and answer questions more seamlessly, and they'll be more personalized. I think instead of saying, "Hey, Ram, this is your benefits information," it's probably going to say, "Hey, Ram, based on your situation, your family status, and your career goals, these are the different things that you should consider." I think it's going to get more and more hyper personalized, I would say. And even with the predictive modeling, I think it's going to get very sophisticated. You know, it's not just saying, hey, this is the problem or this might be the problem. I think the systems will start telling us this is the problem, but this could be all the different solutions. And we literally have to start taking actions based on that. I think we're kind of minimizing the boundaries between human and an AI system, and it's going to get more and more, interactive. That's how I see this happening in the future.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I had someone telling me I will be pretty satisfied with AI when it reminds me of Jarvis from Iron
Oh
Man.
yeah, big fan of that.
Yeah, pretty full voice automation on.
Oh yes, oh yes.
Yeah. So, for HR leaders that they might just starting out their automation journey, they don't have the same years of experience that you do. What's like one piece of practical advice that you would give them in order to maximize their success and maybe like even avoid a mistake that you have done in the previous years?
Look, this is a very complicated question, I'd say, right? And it could go in any direction, really. I would say, start with the problem, right? Understand what the problem is. Don't start with a system or a technology. Say that, hey, I've got an AI agent. It's a fancy tool. What do you want me to automate? I don't think that's the right approach. The approach should be, I have a problem, and these are my limitations. What can really fix my problem? If we start putting the problem, the why, in the front, then I think the solutions will be self-evident as to like what we want to do. I would think about having those discussions, those deep discussions with your leaders, understand what their pain points are, and then start building solutions accordingly. And many a times, technology might or might not be the answer, right? It could just be a process change, it could just be a person change, it could just be how you approach a particular solution, right? So think more broadly, think what the problem is, and then find out whether technology is the solution or not, right? I think that's the very first thing I would go with. But if you find out that the technology is the solution, then come up with a very clear use case. I mean, don't just come with random stuff saying I want to build an AI agent for benefits. No, that's not going to work, right? You have to be very, very specific. What do you want to? What do you want the system to do? Why do you want the system to do? How will you measure that? Like, how do you consider whether it's working or not? And then get all the necessary approvals and buy-ins from the people who want to have it and who want to use it. Because if you don't have the necessary buy-in, nothing's going to make sense. And the final one I was going to say is don't just rush to do everything in one go. I've seen people, including me, guilty, to try to do everything in one go. That's not going to work if we want to do everything in one go just because there are multiple problems. Do that return on investment analysis, find out which one's the most important one and the easiest one that can give us the maximum benefits. Start with small and then keep adding more and more to it. Don't just try to like boil the ocean, right? It's not going to happen on day one. Start small, but think big. That's the approach I would take.
Yeah, that's something I think that's pretty impactful, and it also comes back to what you have also mentioned before. So it comes full circle right now that basically you might not need to change everything at once. You might not need to like change people or strategy all at once. You might reskill some people. You might like reuse some people. Um, Retarget them to higher value tasks, automate a specific thing, not everything
Yes.
from the get go. Yeah, like thank you very much for coming on as a guest. It has been a great honor having you here, especially with like all the experience that you have in your sector. Has been an honor. I would like to thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Paraskevi. This is not an easy one. I know we're all evolving in this whole AI space, but keep learning more and more. Try to implement these things in small pockets. Don't go crazy trying to do this stuff, and I think we'll hit it. So again, thank you so much for having me. This was a great chat.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.